Taken with a Grain of Salt, a collection of short stories by Jason Salthouse. Luck of the Draw. It was a weird time in my life. People were getting married, friends were divorcing, kids were being raised, jobs were being taken seriously, and adults were being formed. It was one of those times I had disappeared into the city and lost touch with my inner circle and family for a few years. I haven't decided if those were times of reflection or not, but they were frequent. I was living with a crazy redhead who was on a warpath of fast cars, wild bars, pool halls, strip clubs, motorcycles, and all the in-between things people do to stay awake and go to sleep when they don't have a set bearing. Like a broken compass when it flops all around trying to find its resting place, she breezed in and out. There was a kid. She wasn't mine, but she was alone. I'll have to guess her age was about 2 or 3 years old, but I can't be sure. Dumbo was on repeat that year, and we had those plastic cereal bowls with the straws attached for slurping the leftover milk. Her dad was doing the best he could do, given his circumstances, which I'm unqualified to speak about, and her mom was now working doubles at one of the main biker bars in the city. I had gotten a job too. I was a friend. I moved in to help out with the bills from splitting up 2 incomes. I worked at one of the various dollar stores as a cashier. It was set off the street a bit in one of those older-style strip malls that look more like islands in the sea of parking lots, bars on the windows and all that deep in the city aesthetic. It was one of those jobs that felt like the time would never come for you to leave, and when it did, that time away was never long enough. It was so boring, until it wasn't. After a few months, one random night, before closing with my manager, a young blonde girl who was all of 23 years old, we were robbed. At gunpoint. There was 2 of them, and it was serious. I remember every bit leading up to that moment he stuck the gun in my chest. Was this real? It looked like an old cowboy gun, 6-shooter, black barrel and cylinder, cheap-looking, fake pearl grips tucked under his white, clammy knuckles. It was very real. My manager had her 4-year-old niece sitting next to her, and they were maybe 5 feet away from me, close to the front of the store. She was spending the night with her aunt. "Put the money in the bag," he said. From trying to move too fast, I dropped some change, and it spilled all over the counter and all over the floor and bounced all around his feet. I remember the coins sounding different as they fell. "Slow down," I said to myself. Everything was in slow motion now, it seemed like. I was calm, collected, and focused. Not the reaction you would expect with a weapon threatening your life. "Where's the rest of the money?" His voice sounded muffled from how tight the bandana was tied around his face. It was a small store, and my drawer was short on cash, because we used the only other register we had as the safe until we closed, and then money was moved to the safe. Dumb, I had always thought. He asked, and she lied. First about the other register being broken and not working, and then about money being in the safe in the back room. Why? Why did she say that? There's no money in the safe. It's all in the other register. We were off. Marching to the back stockroom in a parade of people at gunpoint isn't an ideal situation, and to make things worse, the person in front of me was only about knee-high. My mind flashed to the little girl at home, probably watching Dumbo for the 5th time today, and wondering when I would be home. She wasn't mine, but she was alone. "Get on your knees with your hands up and face the wall," is hard to explain to a small child, so I made eye contact with one of the guns and showed that I was complying but was also in charge of a kid. He seemed to understand and allowed me to continue quietly whispering to her while keeping my hands up and staying on my knees. I could hear them arguing from the office area attached to the stockroom we were in. There was some yelling, some threats, and some other things I'm sure I've forgotten, but all in a flash, as quick as it had started, it was over. They got spooked, had a time frame to adhere to, or realized it wasn't worth it, and they ran straight out the front doors and disappeared into the neighborhood behind the strip mall. Afterward, we went through the obvious channels of reporting and let all the right people know what happened, but things never really felt the same for me. I caught a ride home with a cop of all rides for me to get, and the only reason I even took the offer was to see the funny look on my red-headed friend's face when I pulled up to the house. I explained to her what happened at work, and after an hour or more of just convincing her I wasn't making all this wild shit up, she started laughing. She was laughing because she knew that I was telling the truth, and she was laughing because this kind of thing happened to me a lot. Not being robbed, but super crazy life-changing events. Things that may move mountains for people in their lives never really bothered me in the same way. Time went on. A few weeks passed, and my red-haired friend started seeing more of the daylight hours, and I started to see less of the small friend I had made watching Dumbo while eating cereal out of those cool bowls. Needless to say, I couldn't continue to work at that particular dollar store anymore, and I found out much later that those same two guys actually executed a whole restaurant of after-hours employees during a robbery they committed around the same time they robbed us. I moved out and moved away. Throughout the years, we kept up with one another, and I got to see my friends again, but it was always brief, and so much happens during the in-between times that it gets hard to catch back up. It's like that sometimes with some people. We move on, we move out, some move in, some move away, some grow up, some don't. Sometimes a story is all we have. The end.